Mr. Howard, if you would go ahead and record us, and we'll get it started.
We're good. We're good. I turned it on.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, fellow Rotarians. I'm going to go ahead and open up my slideshow here. So I want to share screen. Welcome you to the Rotary E-Club of North Texas. Today is Tuesday, November the 12th at 6:01. Mr. David, can you lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance, please?
David, lead us in the pledge. Lead us in the pledge.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance
That's
to the
flag of the United States
of
of
America
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Linda, can you open us up in our prayer?
As we gather here this evening as members of Rotary, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our services to fellow citizens and to our community. Keep always in mind the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts to those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Go forth with the magic of Rotary. Amen.
Thank you. Mr. Chris, can you lead us in our mission and vision statement?
The what?
Mission statement. We provide service to others, promote integrity, and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace throughout our fellowship of business, professional, and community leaders. Vision statement. Together we will see a world where others unite, where people will unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Let me admit that person. Robin is joining us. Perfect. Hello, Miss Robin. All right, so just to confirm our attendees for today, we have Jerica, Chris, Linda, David, Howard, Carlissa, Julia, and Robin. And our guest speaker tonight is Chet Galaska. So welcome.
Thank you.
We do want to celebrate Tushar. His birthday is actually today. So Miss Linda, do you mind texting him and wishing him a happy birthday from us?
Okay.
We're excited to announce the board met last Tuesday, trying to find some ways to sponsor or raise some funding for the club. And we're offering 5 sponsorships to be featured on our website. Chris and Carlissa has already secured their spots. So we only have 3 spots left. And the funds are going to go directly to our upcoming grant for Envision Dallas Early Development Center. So I did want to show you what that looks like when you go to our website and you scroll down. Our website sponsorship will be right here, and it's a rotation. So if I click out of this and then I go back to that website, it should show me Carlissa's. I may have gone too fast. So I created a new browser, and now Carlissa's up there. And it is a clickable. So whenever you click the page, it will take you directly to their website or to their Facebook page. So that was just kind of a demo of our new feature that we have on our website. As a reminder, we only have 3 spots left. So if you're interested, please give me a call and we'll get you set up. Any questions, Chris or Carlissa?
No, thank you for taking care of that.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Moving along, our theme this month is to support the Rotary Foundation. The foundation is a very important nonprofit that serves not only Rotarians, but various nonprofits throughout the world. I would really encourage this month if everyone could give to the Rotary Foundation. I'll send a link out. But I would really like to see if we can get the every Rotarian every year with a $25 donation. And as I said, I'll send that out to everyone. The gift to the Rotary Foundation's annual fund supports the projects that inspire learning at all ages, and that money does come back in the form of our grants, which we're going to get $3,000 this year. We were talking earlier, we have our upcoming holiday social on Saturday. Juliet's joined again. Okay. Just call Miss Linda if you have any questions. I think we've got 15 folks coming, so it shall be a lot of fun.
I don't have anything else. I'm going to see if you have food that has to be prepared, maybe be there just a little bit earlier. I haven't, I was asking, Lisa if she could be on this evening to give us any more details, but it should be a fun time. It'll be at Lake Louisville. So, looking forward to going out there.
Sounds lovely. Any other announcements for the better good of the group?
Oh, David and I went out to the Grand Prairie Veterans Ceremony yesterday, and that's sponsored by the 2 Rotary clubs in Grand Prairie. We had a good turnout. And I see if we've done anything else since the last meeting. We've had I guess we already had the Halloween party.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure everybody knows about Blake. He's in the hospital again. So keep him in your prayers and send him a text and wishing him get well. And I think that's all I have.
And then this Carla says Saturday, I attended the training on district grants.
Yes, thank you.
We have to have 2 people attend, so we're halfway there.
Perfect.
Not there because Lisa was there too.
She counts, okay.
Perfect. Good, good. Awesome.
And if she has any questions, she has a direct line of communication.
Right.
All right. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Mr. Howard to introduce our speaker, and I will mute if everybody can mute themselves. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay. So, Chet, I'm not sure how to pronounce. Is it Alaska? Am I pronouncing it correct?
It's just Alaska with a G in front of it.
Okay. That's his name. He's a retired business person who works to dispel myths and misperceptions surrounding diabetes. He's not a medical professional, but has the disease since 1981 and sees things from the perspective of those who have it. General ignorance about diabetes is a real problem that deters care. No one was addressing this, so he made it his retirement project. He's written books, spoken to groups, created the Challenge Diabetes program, developed a diabetes education program that was presented in participation with the YMCA, University of Massachusetts, Springfield College, civil organizations, churches, Men of Color Health Awareness Program. He was also presented the Heroes Walking Among Us Reward by the Massachusetts Foot and Ankle Society. So I'm glad to introduce him, Chet. We record this and then we put it on a YouTube podcast, so more people watch the podcast than are present, so you have a much bigger audience. We encourage speakers to go for 20 to 30 minutes, but I'm just making you aware of that. So thank you. Okay. I'm going to mute myself so you don't get any background noise. Oh, you could start.
Okay. Do you want me to just go for 20 minutes or did you want to ask questions?
Oh, we could do either way. Do you want to do an intro and then have us ask questions? Would that work?
Why don't I do that? Let me give you the basics first, Howard. And then I always find the best part of these things is when people ask questions. So let me give you the basics and that'll give you something to work off of. As Howard mentioned, I've had diabetes since 1981. And I've learned quite a bit over the past 43 years. The reason I'm doing this is because of an incident that happened to me in Chicago. Before I explain what that is, I need to give you some background information on diabetes. If diabetics use insulin or certain type 2 medications, they can have low blood sugars. That's a problem because your brain, unlike other tissues in your body, doesn't store glucose. It takes it directly from the bloodstream. That means that when there isn't enough glucose in the blood, the brain starts going haywire. Your vision can be affected. You can lose coordination, start sweating. If it gets low enough, you can pass out. So it's nothing to fool around with. Luckily, it's easy to treat. All you have to do is eat something sugary, and when the blood glucose level comes back up, your brain comes back online, and you're good to go. Now, having explained that, here's the story. I was in Chicago during the week when Ron Santo was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Because of that, there are all kinds of stories in the local media about him. And it turned out that he had type 1 diabetes back in the 1960s. He kept it a secret because he was afraid that the team would fire him if they found out he had it. So nobody else on the team except for his roommate, who kept it the secret as well, knew about it. Well, he's in a game one time. It's the last of the ninth at Wrigley Field. The Cubs are down by 2. There's 2 outs and 2 men on base. Santos in the on-deck circle, and he feels the symptoms of low blood sugar coming on. So he's stuck. He can't go back to the dugout and tell the manager he needs to eat a candy bar. So he just stays there in the circle praying that the guy at the plate will hit into a double play and retire the side. Well, what happened is the guy walked. So now it's bases loaded, 2 on base, 2 outs. And Santo walks up to the plate. He said he looked up and he saw 3 pitchers, 3 scoreboards, 30 some odd people standing out in the field. When the pitcher wound up and threw the ball, it looked like it had a slinky attached to the back of it. So he took a cut at it, connected, and put it out of the park for a walk-off grand slam home run. So he made it around the bases and got back to the dugout in time to eat his candy bar and raise his blood sugar. Well, most people think the walk-off grand slam home run is the exciting part of this, but anybody who has experienced low blood sugar knows that's not the case. The real drama was what was going on in Santo's head as he was running around the bases, not knowing whether he was going to make it or not, because he could have passed out in front of 20,000 screaming fans, and his secret would have been out of the bag. So I thought that was a pretty cool story. I came home and started telling it, only to find out that people really don't understand diabetes well at all. I wound up explaining type 1 to people, but they also asked me about type 2. Now, I've got type 1, and I know about that. But what I did when I researched type 2 was that I had a lot of misconceptions too. And I figured if somebody like me really doesn't understand type 2 at all, this has got to be a big problem in our society. And it turns out that it is. People really do not understand diabetes. And as a result of that, there's a stigma that causes many diabetics not to treat their disease at all. They ignore it rather than put up with the feedback they get from people who don't know anything about it. So to explain that the way this thing works, I'd like to explain how normal bodies work and then how diabetes operates. When normal people eat food, it gets digested into glucose. Glucose winds up in the bloodstream and it gets carried to every cell in your body where it's used for energy. When your pancreas senses the glucose in the bloodstream, it produces a hormone called insulin. Insulin's job is to act as a key that goes with the glucose in the blood, and it actually unlocks the individual cell walls to allow the glucose in. In normal people, it's a wonderful process. Just enough insulin is out there to let all the glucose in so that the glucose stays in a narrow range automatically. With diabetes, that system doesn't work. With type 1, which is the kind that I have, as I mentioned, I have an autoimmune disease. My body has attacked the insulin-producing cells in the pancreas, and it's killed them off. So my body doesn't produce insulin at all. In my case, I have to take insulin because it's the only way that I get it. So I'm taking injections several times a day, and I've been doing it for a long time. Type 2 is a different disease, though. Type 2 is the most common form of diabetes that's responsible for 90 to 95% of all cases. It starts with a condition called insulin resistance. And the condition is exactly what its name says. It makes your cells resistant to insulin which means that your pancreas has to produce extra amounts of it to overcome the resistance. It does this for years, sometimes up to 6 or 8 years, before you get diagnosed with prediabetes. That happens because your pancreas can no longer produce enough insulin to take care of all the glucose in the blood. The insulin resistance gets progressively worse naturally, and so over time, the pancreas loses more and more of its capacity to make insulin, and this is where you need, you have to watch diet and exercise, you have to take medications and do various things to control that blood sugar. So you've got two different ways of getting high blood sugar. Some of the treatments overlap, but typically they're treated differently. So what I discovered with type 2 diabetes is that there are a lot of misconceptions about it. The biggest one that I ran into, and the one that I thought was the most obvious, is that being overweight doesn't cause diabetes. When you look at the CDC statistics, it'll tell you that 70% of us are overweight, but only about 10% of us have diabetes. And if you go to reputable sites like the Cleveland Clinic, for example, or the American Diabetes Association, they will tell you that most overweight people never get diabetes. At the same time, many thin people who watch their weight and eat good diets do get diabetes. So the question is, if weight is not the cause of it, then what is the cause? What it is that you have to have a genetic predisposition that is triggered by something in the environment. We don't know what the triggers are, but we do know a lot about the genes. We've had studies done that show that there are over 200 genes that are related to type 2 diabetes. So we know that condition's out there. We also know that it's more prevalent in certain groups like, Latinos, Black people, Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, Asians have more of a predisposition to the genetic part of this thing, so they are more likely to get type 2. Having said that, anybody can get it. There are a lot of people of all races that have type 2. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is dispel these misperceptions so that people get respected instead of being downed. I developed a diabetes education course that I gave in a number of locations. As Howard mentioned, at colleges and civic groups and that sort of thing. But I also gave it at medical centers. And I was giving one at a medical center one time, and this poor woman who was in the class, she was overweight, but she broke down in tears, because her father was relentlessly telling her that if she would just lose a few pounds, she would get rid of the diabetes. Well, that is simply untrue. Number one, the weight would not cause her to lose diabetes, and it also didn't cause it in the first place. But this is the kind of thing that people put up with all the time. In fact, one of the most gratifying things about doing the classes in person was that diabetics would come to me afterwards and tell me the best thing I told them was that they were not at fault for getting it. You can see the guilt and shame drip off their faces because they have been walking around personally thinking that they brought this on themselves, and that was simply not true. Now, having talked about weight, weight is always brought up when it comes to diabetes, and it is a factor in managing it. Once you have insulin resistance, you need to do things that are going to help keep your blood glucose level lower. With weight, we have two kinds of weight in our body. One's called visceral fat, and the other is subcutaneous fat. The subcutaneous fat is the soft, squishy stuff that you think of. It's on the outside of your body. But visceral fat is hard. It's packed internally around your organs. And visceral fat increases insulin resistance. So the more visceral fat you have, the worse your insulin resistance is going to be. So by losing weight, you can lose that visceral fat. In fact, one of the positive things about this is that when you lose weight, the visceral fat is the first to go. That's why they tell you that losing 5 to 7% of your body weight will make a difference right away, because it does reduce insulin resistance. So, I could talk about other things that are untrue, but I wonder if anybody has any questions. All of us either have diabetes or we know someone who does, or we worry about getting it ourselves. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
I was diagnosed with diabetes type 2, I guess about almost 3 years ago. And they put my metformin, it did not work at all. It only made me sicker. And then I had something other. And then I found out about this one program. In fact, the person is a Rotarian. But anyway, I've been off no dairy and no grains. And I do take some supplements, but I've not had any medications for 2 years now. And I just keep my diet, my food, what I'm supposed to eat. Now, last night we went to Texas Roadhouse. I indulged on their rolls, and so my blood sugar was up a little bit, but it was only like 107. So, but I try to keep it between 85 to 95 to, or not over 100. And
Well, that's really excellent.
that's been
I
going
mean,
on.
that's not even diabetic.
Well, yeah, the doctors say I'm diabetic because if that's, I had to go to the hospital for something else, and one of the doctors comes in and says, "Oh, she's a complete diabetic," because it was over 200 at that time when I was in the
Oh,
hospital.
okay. All
So
right, so you're just doing a really good job of managing it.
yeah, without any medication.
I'm helping.
And so David said he's helping because he does my cooking, but
Well, that's huge. You know, one of my big benefits is that my wife is a good cook and she understands what's going on too.
yeah,
What's happening with diet is that you try to avoid foods that are going to raise your blood sugar, and that means carbohydrates. Sugar is a carbohydrate, but carbohydrates are hidden all over the place. They're in breads. Potatoes are very high in carbohydrate. Peas are high, but there are other foods that are not. The thing about carbohydrates is that when you read the label, you know, the nutrition label on foods, a lot of people just look at the sugar, but the sugar is just one component of the total carbohydrate. If you look at the total carbohydrate, it's almost always higher than what the sugar content is. And you can't be fooled by this because 1 gram of carbohydrate digests into 1 gram of sugar. It's exactly the same thing. So when you're eating that bread, you know, the carbohydrates are going to become sugar. And this is where a lot of people fall short, you know, that they don't realize that. Um, Another factor that people are not aware of a lot of times is physical activity. And we talk about diet and exercise, and a lot of people are turned off by the exercise part of it because they think you have to run marathons or, you know, do really strenuous exercises. But the fact is that just doing common everyday things is more powerful in controlling blood sugars than vigorous exercise is. So if you do simple things like just move around the house, doing housework, doing gardening, you go shopping, you can, you know, park your car a little farther from the store so you get extra steps in. You know, things like walking and low impact exercises really do help the blood sugar. So in a
Chris,
nutshell, that's really what diabetics try to do with the diet and exercise. And like the lady I just talked to, if you do it well enough, you may not need medications at all. A lot of people get through their whole lives without taking medication.
yeah. I see where Chris has a question.
Sure.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Yes,
can hear you.
Yes. I had a question. Does stress contribute to diabetes?
Does
Does-
Stress, being stressed out, you know, having multiple mental
it,
health.
it doesn't cause diabetes, but it can drive your blood sugar higher. The reason for that is that your liver actually manufactures glucose and it stores it, you know, until you need it. Well, you know, the fight or flight reflex where you get your adrenaline pumped up. Well, what your liver does when that happens is it releases that glucose into your bloodstream. So it figures, well, you need some energy here. You're either going to have to fight or you're going to have to run. So it does that automatically. And that glucose does raise your blood sugar. That's one of the maddening things about diabetes. You
yeah.
know, you might think that it all depends on what you eat and how much you exercise, but that's only part of it. Your liver takes over and it's really a wild card. It can be shooting glucose into your bloodstream and you have no idea why. you have a high blood sugar, and all you can do is figure that's what happened. Did,
Yeah, I have a question.
yep, go ahead.
I'm muted. I forgot.
Yeah, so my question is this. I've been a type 2 diabetes patient since 2018. And I've been having problem with the medications, because I used to take metformin, was just them too big for my throat. So my question is, how can I avoid taking medication for diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes?
The only way to do that is through diet and exercise. With the diet, you keep yourself from putting sugar into your blood in the first place. So if you eat protein, for example, protein doesn't raise your blood sugar at all. You can eat all the eggs or meat or fish or chicken that you want, and that will not raise your blood sugar. What you want to do is figure out where your carbohydrates are coming from and limit those as best you can. The other thing is the exercise, because exercise takes glucose right out of your bloodstream. It either burns it, your muscles will either burn it or they'll store it for future use. So that is really a quick way to get your blood sugar down. If you develop a lifestyle that controls your diet and involves exercise, you can really keep your blood sugars in pretty good check without medication. But you have to really know what you're doing. I'm not really here to sell anything, but having said that, let me sell you something. I created some videos that explain diabetes in a way that people understand very clearly and easily. They're on my website and they're cheap. I think they're $3, $4, something like that. I only charge that because I've got expenses that I try to cover. But if you go there are two videos. One has to do with the misperceptions about diabetes and the ways that diabetes operates, but the other is called the nuts and bolts of managing diabetes. It'll tell you things like where you can find carbohydrates. For example, if you're not sure whether something's got a carbohydrate or not, you can read the nutrition label on the food itself. If there's no information on the nutrition label, or if you don't have a label, there are books out there. There are carb counter books. They're usually part of calorie counter books. It's just a separate part of it. You can ask Alexa or Siri. You go to Siri and just say, Siri, how many carbs in an ear of corn? And she'll tell you. So it's not hard to figure out where the carbs are coming from. If you go to a restaurant, most restaurants have menus that will tell you what the carb content of certain foods is. I was blown away one time. I was at a Friendly's restaurant. You don't have them down there, but it's a big chain up here in the Northeast. And I had a roll that had salad in it. And I figured, well, that's got to be low carb. There's a little wrap, and you had that and the salad dressing. Well, when I got home, my blood sugar was through the roof. I couldn't believe it. But when I went to the website and looked up that particular dish, it had, excuse me, all kinds of sugar. The salad dressing itself was loaded with sugar. So that was a lesson learned. You have to be careful with the dressings. It's not just the chicken and the salad, that sort of thing. But what you find if you look at your own diet is that you don't really eat that many different things. Your breakfasts are pretty much the same. Lunches are around about the same. Dinners will probably vary more, but over the course of a month, you're going to repeat the same recipes for dinners. So the only foods you really have to worry about are the ones that you're actually eating. You don't have to worry about cookbooks with 1,000 recipes or all this stuff you see on the web. Look at the stuff that you are actually eating right now and figure out where the carbohydrates are. One common one I found is that a lot of people like to have snacks before they go to bed, and a favorite one is Raisin Bran. Well, you would think that that would be healthy for you, but Raisin Bran is a very high carbohydrate food. In fact, cold cereals in general are very high in carbohydrate. But with Raisin Bran, you've got the raisins, and then they sprinkle it with sugar on top of that. So you're really raising your blood sugar a lot. So you can do yourself a big favor just by, if you have a piece of chicken, for example, instead of the Raisin Bran, all of a sudden you've gone from raising your blood sugar a lot to not raising it at all. The same thing goes for every other meal you eat. If you're having a sandwich, you're better off eating less bread. In fact, what I do is I'll use one piece of bread and I'll cut it in half, but then I'll really load it up with chicken or tuna or whatever protein I happen to have. And that does two things. First thing is that it cuts out one whole slice of bread that I'm not eating. But at the same time, by eating all that protein, I stay full longer because the protein digests a lot slower than the carbohydrate does. So you go from a situation where you're eating two slices of bread that are going to digest quickly and make you feel hungry sooner to eating one piece of bread with protein that'll keep you feeling full. So these are the kinds of little strategies that we need to learn and exercise.
I see.
So if I might ask a question,
Sure.
Does things like garlic and ginger help in bringing down your sugar level?
Well, there's controversy about those things. Here's the good news. Spices almost never raise your blood sugar. So if you want tasty food, spices are the way to go instead of sugar. There's always been a controversy about cinnamon, whether that lowers your blood sugar. And I guess it does to a degree, but not enough to really make much of a difference. This is one of the things that's out there that hurts people. I know a person who read that cinnamon lowered her blood sugar. So what she did is she would have toast and jam in the morning. She would sprinkle cinnamon on it, and she thought she was controlling her blood sugar. Well, she wasn't becoming close to controlling her blood sugar because the jam was still raising her blood sugar, and the cinnamon wasn't going to lower it enough to compensate for the sugar in the jam. So, to answer your question, the chances are those spices don't affect your blood sugar at all. And if they do, it's not much.
Okay.
But that is a positive thing because we all like tasty food. And, with all those spices out there, you can make some pretty good tasting stuff that doesn't raise your blood sugar.
Okay.
I see where Robin has a question.
Sure.
I was going to say, I've appreciated this. I don't have diabetes or any of that. I do have a friend, though, that had lost her baby because the doctor she had at the time, it's her only child, she made it to the 28-week mark, assumed that because she was skinny, she didn't have diabetes. Well, that's why she ended up having her baby. She wasn't stillborn, but she ended up going into a coma because my friend didn't know she was type 1 diabetic. And so because of that, I've always told people, I'm like, I think is there more skinnier people that get diabetes? Because I don't have it at all. I was pre-diabetic one time, but that was fixed with diet and exercise, which I'm like, I like exercising.
Yeah,
so
there you
I
go.
was also wondering for the visceral fat, you said is the hard fat.
Yep.
And then what was the other fat? Because I got the wiggly and the jiggly kind.
It's subcutaneous.
Subcutaneous. Okay. How do you get rid of that fat? Is it just like I gotta keep wiggle? I just use it to tell my kids I don't want them fat. So
Well,
my kids are all little. So I appreciated the cereal part because the one loves cereal. And my husband and I got into an argument the one day. He's like, they're going to end up diabetic if they keep eating cereal because his one aunt did that. So
see what he said, that's just not true. If you don't have the genetics or the trigger, it doesn't matter how much sugar you eat. A lot of people eat a lot of sugar and they don't get diabetes because that's not what causes it.
Okay.
Wow, where'd that baby come from?
Oh, my
It
husband
looks
brought
like you
him
pulled it
over.
out of the wall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I
That's
forgot to
quite a
find
trick.
out. But
But
no, I was just wondering because the sub what was that fat?
subcutaneous.
Subcutaneous. Okay.
Yeah, that really doesn't have much to do with diabetes at all.
Okay.
Um, except that, it might impede your ability to exercise. It would be an indirect thing like that, but it's not really a player in diabetes.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, if I had an easy solution for how to get rid of subcutaneous fat, I wouldn't be here tonight. I'd be out spending my money somewhere.
Well, I appreciate that because I'm just like, I know how to get rid of it. I'm just, to a certain extent, but I'm like, it'd be nice because it almost sounds like the visceral would be better, but at the same time, not really.
But what you said about being pre-diabetic, you've got insulin resistance. If you were diagnosed with pre-diabetes, it means your blood sugar was elevated, but not much above normal.
That's
And
it.
what you're doing with diet exercise exactly proves the point that
Yeah.
diet and exercise can control your blood sugar. And it's wonderful you're doing that.
Right there.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was years and years ago. That's maybe about a decade and a half ago now that I was told that. But like I said, I was able to fix it doing those two things. So I figured I don't have to worry about it. Because then my other question was, like my mom, she's got hypoglycemia.
Yep.
And so like I notice sometimes like when my own sugar drops, but I'm not diabetic. So I do have things like a piece of cheese or something, but even with the hypoglycemia, is that like a form of diabetes or like a precursor to it or no?
No, well, you said hypo, not hyper.
Yeah, the hypo, because hers
Oh,
goes too low and I've had it where mine goes too low too.
yeah, that's not related to diabetes at all. It's a separate condition. But what you're experiencing is what I explained in that Ron Santos story. When it goes too low, you start feeling fuzzy. You're not thinking too clearly. You might start sweating. That's what low blood sugar does.
Yeah, I've had that experience way more than I want sometimes.
Yeah, it's not comfortable.
No, it's not. It's makes a person wonder if they're going to live or die, especially when you're in the store in the checkout. I've had that before, and
Well,
it's
well,
not
just
fun.
well, to set your mind at ease, people don't die of hypoglycemia, but what they can die of is if it gets low enough that you pass out and you hit your head on the way down. The injury can be dangerous, but the condition itself, it's not fatal.
I'll click on it. Okay. Also, there's somebody on the phones that's been waiting for a while.
Oh, that's Carlos.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I just had a couple of things and ask you maybe to talk a little bit more about it. One is my mother-in-law was diabetic. My husband was insulin dependent, and I have a granddaughter who is insulin dependent. And especially between my husband and my granddaughter, of which there's like almost 60 years age difference, the treatment was so different that when my granddaughter was diagnosed, and I was trying to be so rigid and was kind of uh, I didn't think her parents were doing a good job, but they were doing everything her endocrinologist had told them to do because
Yeah.
treatment had just changed so much over the years. And I know people sometimes. My husband really managed his diabetes well, but people sometimes would be critical because he was not a sweet eater, but once in a while he would have a dessert, and people might be critical. So there's that personal and individual management, but the other thing is the impact on family. And so, I was constantly being aware of what he was eating, and I needed to learn about the different treatment strategies. And then the last few years of his life, he got to where during the night, sometimes his blood sugar would go down to 20. And, I'm the one that had to take care of him, and I couldn't go anywhere overnight because of being so scared. And I really tried to talk him into the Dexcom glucose
Yes.
manager, and he was resentful for quite a while. But when he finally got one, oh man, did it change both of our lives.
It is a life-changing thing. That's what I
Yes.
have. I've got the Dexcom, and I've had it for, I don't know, 7 years or so, and it's really wonderful. One of the main reason I went to it was because it has that low glucose alarm. So I've got it
Yes.
set though when my glucose goes down to 80 and it's headed down, it'll go off and it'll warn me that your blood sugar is going low. So it's great to have that
Right.
warning
So
because a
that
lot
was
of times, you know, the symptoms can be subtle and they really sneak up on you, but the meter picks it up.
No, but
And
and
then
so it
there's
was
one other
great
thing
for
you
me
mentioned
because
there that there's one other thing you mentioned that I'd like to talk about, and that's about people being critical of diabetics who eat dessert. Um, these people are called the diabetes police. If you read diabetes publications, you'll find that that's a common term for people who don't know what they're talking about, who love to judge diabetics who they think are doing the wrong thing. I had a woman in a class one time whose aunt was diabetic, and she and her sister would visit the aunt and they would rifle through her drawers trying to find the candy that they knew she had hidden somewhere. Of course, it was hidden because the aunt knew the nieces were going to come in and look for it. So, you know, this woman, you know, she was standing up and she was so proud of what she and her sister had done. I said, look, all you're doing is wasting the money your aunt spent on the candy, and you're demeaning her. In the meantime, you're not doing her any favors. But people, I guess, think they're doing the right thing. But, you know, a diabetic doesn't have to swear off sugar forever and always. You can treat yourself to a dessert and your sugar goes high for a little while, but you get it back down. And the fact is that temporary high blood sugars are not what cause the damage. It's the average high blood sugar. That's why we do the A1C test. That'll tell you what your average was for the previous 3 months, because that's the critical thing. The implication is that, you know, you can have those highs, but if you get them down, you're still going to be okay. So that's one of the
and
reasons
just regarding the Dexcom is, and what was so great about it is I could be gone, but I would get alerts on my phone so that if I needed to do something or alert a family member to come and take care of my husband, it was a lifesaver.
well, you know what else is great about it for kids who have diabetes? You know that they when they go to schools, the school nurse can be warned if the child's blood sugar is going low. You know, up until Dexcom, they had no way of knowing. So now it's really a great way to protect the kids.
And that's how I knew about it, was because of my granddaughter. I mean, early on, she had a Dexcom and she had a pump and stuff. So it helped me learn even more about my husband's diabetes.
raise your hand.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a complicated thing, and it takes a while to learn about it.
Raise your
And
hand.
one of the reasons that I'm doing what I am is that if you're going to learn about it from the medical profession, it can be a long, drawn out process because you only see your doctor for a short amount of time, you know, every time you see him, which isn't that often. You know, they really don't have the time to explain all this stuff in detail. And then if you try to look it up yourself, that can be hard too. So,
Okay, David has a question.
sure.
David?
I've seen, and I'm sure you have on the internet, hundreds of watches that are no contact blood sugar testers. Are those, that seems like it'd be good because it's a more or less continuous score.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you here. My volume's not that great.
Okay, the watches that could do a non-contact blood sugar check.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. I don't know anything about them. If they work, then that's great.
Well, I had one and it would show either high or low. You know, my doctors and all that does it. But when I would check it, when it was says almost 5, you say, oh, well, that's too low. But when I go in and check, it was right where it should be. But then when it went up to 5.9, well, I knew that was high. But it was, you know, touching your skin and so many of the things that are on watches now that you can get done. But anyway,
Yeah, I wish I knew, but
My doctor didn't think it was good, but I could sort of tell, though, by what it was telling me what to do. So it may be off just a little bit, but it was pretty accurate. And then my phone died. I mean, my watch died, so I don't have it anymore.
oh,
So,
okay.
okay, I think Robin has another question.
Yeah,
Robin?
'cause I got thinking about from my friend that I mentioned for about her baby. I got thinking because I know she's had like an insulin pump, and I don't know what those exactly do, but is that supposed to help her live longer? Because I know she's been battling alcohol addiction for after her daughter passed. So that's been at least 10 years now. She's been battling that off and on. And so I was wondering, how does that help her? Because I don't know if she's gotten a pump yet, but I know she went back and forth on whether or not she should get a pump. And then, like I said, her alcohol addiction, she's been battling for, like I said, 10 years. Does that affect that then too for the insulin?
Well, first with the alcohol, alcohol actually lowers your blood sugar. It doesn't raise it.
Okay.
But if beer has other carbohydrates, it's not a big player as far as blood sugar goes. But to get back to your major point about the pump operates along with a continuous glucose monitor. Now, with the system I've got, I put the monitor in. It's on my abdomen. You put it on once every 10 days, and it measures the blood sugar from the interstitial fluids just under the skin. Okay, it determines what your blood sugar is, and then it radios what that blood sugar is to a pump. In my case, I carry the pump in my pocket, and that is inserted. The insulin goes through a tube that's inserted into my abdomen in a different place. So the monitor, well, the system will determine how much insulin you need, and it'll administer it. So if it's high, it'll give you some more insulin, and that happens automatically. But it only does it within a narrow range. So if you think your blood sugar's high, or even if you just check it once in a while, which is what I do, whether I feel like it's high or low, I just automatically check it. If it's over a certain range, I will ask it, do I need a bolus? A bolus means you're going to give yourself more insulin, and it'll tell me what the recommended amount is. So we apply that. And it really takes a lot of guesswork out of it. The hardest thing I found with the pump is that I had been calculating how much insulin I need for so long that I didn't trust the pump. It was telling me different things than what I would have calculated myself. But after a while, I realized that the pump is delivering a basal amount of insulin all day, every day. And I never did that before. So the pump is calculating it based on that. So I finally come to realize that the pump actually is better at this than I am. So I really rely on it. So I would recommend it to anybody. It's really a life-changing thing. Just to give you an idea as to how life-changing it is, back when I was first diagnosed in 1981, we didn't have glucose meters at all. The best you could do to determine your blood sugar was to use this stuff called test tape. It's a yellow paper that came in a little dispenser that looked like a tape measure. And what you would do is rip off a few inches of it, and you would dip it in a sample of urine. And if your sugar had been low, it would stay yellow. If it started turning various shades of green, you would know that it was high. But the problem was that that was old information because that's urine that was produced an hour ago. So it didn't tell you what your blood sugar really was. It may have gone down a lot since that was produced, but that's the best we could do. So take that scenario and compare it to what I'm dealing with today. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is science fiction what's going on right now. But that's another reason that people have to get out of being stigmatized by diabetes and just taking the bull by the horns and treating it because we do have the ways to do it very well. But despite that, people still die from it. An employee of mine from years ago, I ran into him maybe 5 years ago, and he was in a wheelchair. Turned out that he had diabetes. He ignored it. He went to the hospital because he couldn't take the pain anymore. So they took one leg off on one day and the other one off on the next. And 2 years later, he died of complications of diabetes. Now, this was totally unnecessary, but he let it go. And a lot of people do that.
One of the things I do of carbohydrate, I love chips, but Siete, they use cassava root. So I can eat all of those I want, and there's different flavors. My waffles are made with almond flour, and I do a lot with almond flour. I use coconut milk or almond milk, so I stay away from that dairy. And so there's a lot of substitutes out there that you can get if you know. So
Well, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different things you can do. A lot of people have gluten intolerance now, but you can work around that too, figure out what you can eat. And like I said, we don't eat that many different things. If you can figure out the things to eat for your breakfast and lunch, that's 2/3 of your meals right there. And then for dinner, you probably want to avoid having pasta. In fact, here's an example I ran into. This woman said she had trouble keeping her blood sugar below 200. Well, it turned out that her husband worked the second shift. He came home and wanted to have dinner. She liked to have dinner with him, and he liked pasta, so she was eating pasta every night. Well, pasta is very high in carbohydrate. So I suggested that she eat something different for the next week because our classes were once a week. So she did that, came back the following week and said her blood sugar had spiked around 110. So for her, that was the low-hanging fruit. It was obvious where her sugar was coming from. So that's the kind of thing you want to look at.
yeah, there was a Jerusalem artichoke pasta that I used to get. And of course, like I said, there's other vegetable type things that you can get.
Sure.
So anyway, Jerica, are you on? Jerica.
Yeah,
Oh,
great.
okay.
Yeah, great dialogue, great discussion. I mean, we had over 55% participation today, a lot of engagement. So, great topic, great discussions. Thank you so much. Ms. Carlissa, your hand is up. Do you want to take the last question?
Oh, I just was thinking that Chet, you may speak to, I think this is related to Robin's questions earlier about gestational diabetes.
Right. Yeah, what happens with that is that between the 24th and 28th week, expectant mothers will have high blood sugar. The reason for that is that the placenta produces a hormone that interferes with the production of insulin and the use of insulin. So it's not type 1 and it's not type 2, it's its own thing. And it goes away after birth. So the only real downside is that you may be more prone to get type 2 later on in life, but it does go away in most cases.
What is a type 3?
Type 3 is a new thing.
Yeah, I've just heard about it.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I've read a little bit about it, but I really don't understand it myself.
Okay.
I mean, there are the type 3 has something to do with Alzheimer's. Somehow, whatever this thing is, they think it promotes Alzheimer's, but I don't know. I really have to bone up on it, but it's a new thing. And I just don't know.
Okay.
And now there's type 1.5.
Yeah.
I was gonna say my friend, she did end up with the type 1 after she had her baby, after her baby went into that coma. So she did find out she does have that type 1. But then that's why I asked about like for a pump and all that. And then the other thing is I was wondering because I've been pregnant officially 12 years in a row this month.
Wow.
But I was gonna say I've done those glucose tests every single pregnancy. Can those cause diabetes because they're doing it all the time or no? Because I just don't like doing them.
Here's the thing to remember is that it's caused when a genetic predisposition, you've got to have the genes for it, hits an environmental trigger. We don't know what the triggers are, but other things like this, like eating too much sugar or a variety of other things that people think just aren't true. It's genetics and triggers. And unfortunately, we don't know what the triggers are, so they're hard to avoid.
Well, chat, the team, that has concluded our evening. What a great conversation.
Before we finish, could I just add one more thing?
Certainly.
I'd really appreciate it if your club would go to my website and download the videos. Like I said, they're very cheap. Divided by all of you, it costs you 25 cents a piece or something.
Will you put it in the chat box, your website?
I'm sorry?
Can you put your website in the chat box?
Or just
I'm not sure how to do that, to be honest with you.
What is your?
It's challengediabetes.us. And there's a lot of stuff in there that is presented just the way I've been talking to you, just straight from the shoulder, common sense stuff. But I did those so that people would be educated, whether they have diabetes, maybe live with somebody who does, or are just curious about it. So have a look. I think you'll enjoy what you see.
Thank you. It's all very interesting.
Well,
Yes,
thank you.
great
I think so
presentation.
too.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Well, this concludes our Rotary meeting for tonight. Really appreciate Chet coming in as our guest speaker tonight, educating us on the various attributes and some good information on diabetes and engaging conversation among our Rotarians tonight. So not Merry Christmas. My goodness, I am off today. I will be at the holiday party on Sunday. Next time I'll be missing in action.
Sunday. It's Saturday.
Saturday at 1. And then Chris is going to be leading us at our next Rotary meeting as I will be out of town. So happy Thanksgiving to you guys, and we'll see you back shortly. Cheers.
Will you go close with the 4-way test?
Oh, see, I forgot what. Yes. I need to write this down. All right. Please join me in the 4-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair
to all concerned?
Third, will it build
goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth, will it
be beneficial
to all concerned? And fifth, will it be fun? Thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we'll see you shortly.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay.